here as always. I appreciate you guys watching my day job here. I am actually still working on getting ready for my Inventables and rebuilding the workshop. My workshop, if you're new here, it's a two-car garage and I have a lot of equipment. And the problem with having a lot of equipment is to be able to use it, you have to make it functional as possible. And for about 17 years, I've been able to work with having my table saw, my regular arm saw, drill press, router table, shaper, 2 horsepower bandsaw, wood lathe, edge sander, 3 horsepower dust collector, and thickness sander. And still have enough space to put together cabinets. Well, the squeaking you hear is the bearings on the dust collector. It's been doing that for probably 10 years or so. The problem is I'm trying to step up my capabilities and getting a CNC machine. And the CNC machine that I'm getting is actually the Inventables Pro Series. This is their big enchilada. It's 4x4 capability. Actually, it's infinite because you can actually slide pieces into it. So having this piece needs 56 by 66 inches of space to be set on, and they recommend a 6x6 table to go on to have it be able to work with it. Now with this machine, a lot of the tasks that I normally do by cutting it on the table saw and joining the edges and doing all these things will be eliminated on a lot of projects, because literally your imagination is the only thing that can stop you with what you can create. I'll be able to literally make a kitchen cabinet by telling this computer what I want, and it's going to cut out the dados for it to be put together. It's going to do the pocket holes in it. It's going to be able to do the shelving pin holes on it. You name it, it will be able to cut it out. But even beyond that, it'll be able to do 3D carvings and stuff, so that way I can customize things. The problem, of course, is making space for it. Now, I have been working for about the last week and a half, literally tearing this place apart. I know it looks like a big pile, it looks like a tornado came through it, but that's me in organized clutter. And I've been going in my head because originally I was getting their smaller version, and I had built it for their 2x4 one, which only needs 31 inches. And then I come to find out they're missing supply-wise some of the parts to put together the one I wanted. So shout out to the guys from Inventables, because they said, hey, we have the bigger machine, we'll give it to you for the same price. So I'm ecstatic about getting the bigger machine because it'll save time and be able to produce more. But I then, of course, had to create more space. In some regard, it would have been nice to have the extra space in the workshop now that I've created it. But it's going to be even better, though, to be able to take literally a sheet of plywood. So here's the concept here. I've changed up my dust collection hoses and things. So now I have a port over here, which will be over top of where the Inventables will be. This whole unit will be moving back and forth and cutting things out. It's like a router that has a computer brain. I've changed the equipment over there on the wall, so that way I have about 34 inches of space on the other side of it to still be able to walk through. Or if I'm edge sanding, I can still use the edge sander or thickness sander. In fact, I've been doing work here in the workshop while I've been working to make sure that the workflow still works. I've got over there some cutting boards that we've gone through, we glued up, we run them through the planer to make sure that works. We ended up going through the thickness sander. I've gone through and moved all the outlets because a lot of these are 220 pieces of equipment and needs higher voltage. So we've gotten all that stuff done. We've rerun the ductwork so that way the dust collection gets up most of the dust. I still get a bit on me because that's from sanding and things, but it works out pretty good. Now there are some compromises I have to make. You notice here I've got a 15-inch planer that's down there, planing some rough lumber because buying it in the rough is cheaper. And like when I'm making cutting boards, it's a little bit thicker than an inch. You might get 7/8 thick wise board planing it yourself. And when you're making cutting boards, if you've got 8 pieces that are 1/8 of an inch thicker, that means that you're getting a whole nother inch of material. So you're wasting less. Or you may end up having pieces that you want to be a different size. So we actually have the thickness planer underneath here. The drawback is, instead of it being up high, where you can stand up and do it, is it's down below. and I have to get down on a knee to crank the crank on, but that's okay. The way you really want to do this to make it easy and advantageous is actually have two people here, because here's where this works out good. If we have more than one piece of wood, this is the way it's smart. Let's say I buy 100 board feet of lumber and I'm going to mill it up. I'll be able to set it up here on this work surface right here, right? Put a stack up here of lumber, right? 10, 12, 15 pieces, whatever. Go ahead, crank it down. I feed in here, and then he can go ahead and load up those pieces that are plain right here on top of it. We get through that stack, I get down there, I crank it down a little bit more, you know, so I take another pass. And you keep doing that, and you'll find out you'll be able to plane a good bit of lumber in no time. So this actually works good. And with this only being a 20 by 20 shop, I can plane 8.5 foot long boards without a problem. So that's great. And again, it's a compromise, but we're using up every bit of space. Now over here right now, because we're building, I actually have my joiner right here that I can do the same thing. I can join 9 foot long boards on the joiner here without, 10 foot long boards here with the joiner without a problem, because the way I have it moved out right now because we're actually working on extension tables and I have to do some leveling, so that's why I haven't put that together yet. But the way I have it set up is, you can see, you look down there, I've got space between the bandsaw and the shaper that the wood can go through. So all of this is meant to be so you can use the length as much as possible. So now you've got a workstation here, and I thought about doing this, but I didn't. And I may still at some point, although I'll need a little bit more space, is I thought about actually, but I need this to be wider, putting it in so that's actually a router here. And if you get one of the crank down router kits and things on there, you could actually end up basically getting another one of these fences like this, modifying it so that way you could actually use it, or just make an attachment that would be able to be adjustable on it, so that way you could actually have the router table right here. And I may actually consider that, because if I do that, then that means this router table that's over here would be able to fit in. Or maybe what it is the way to do it, let's see, I'm running these ideas in my head, would be to take this one out and see if we have enough space between the planer and all it to be able to put it in there. Then you use that fence. Probably won't do that one. I think I'll just keep that over there. The other nice thing about this is I originally made this stand because that's all I needed for the smaller version. Then I find out I get the bigger one. So I made this other unit in here, which actually is now a lumber rack that's underneath of it. Over here on the other side, we've actually built drawers in the cabinet, so I'll be able to keep my bits, and they have, of course, the micrometer and things like that. We'll be able to be in the drawers here while we're using the Inventables. And the Inventables is a little bit smaller than what my tabletop is. This is actually 2 layers of plywood thick. This second piece of plywood had a little bit of a warp in it. But what I'm going to do to make sure that it stays tight and strong is I'm actually going to get a piece of angle iron. The angle iron will attach on here and attach to the cabinet, and that will keep it true, strong, and really be able to bolt this thing and lock it together, because the Inventables will be moving around a lot, and so there could be a lot of vibration. And I want to make sure that this is true on there. So that's where the angle iron will come in. And I do have the cabinet space underneath here right now. I'm just kind of piled stuff in there while I'm rearranging the workshop. But it is actually coming along pretty well. And let me show you guys something else that I have over here too, because again, when you have a small workshop, everything that you can create to maximize your space is truly a blessing, because you want to have space to be able to assemble stuff. That's kind of this area here. I still have to get used to the idea of, typically when I make a kitchen cabinet, I buy a 4x8 sheet of plywood. I used to have the table saw fence come down further, so I could 34.5 cross cut a piece of plywood, because that's the height of the base cabinet. And then I go through and I cut it down, of course, to 23¼ inches wide. And then I cut the, the notch for the kick plate out. And then I put the dado head on it and do my dados across so that way I can assemble it. And then I do my 1/4 inch dado across the back. And I go through, screw that up. And then after the cabinet's put together, go through and hand drill all of the holes with the jig for the adjustable shelves. With this Inventables, I got to get it in my head that all I got to do is come in here with a piece of plywood, set it up on top of the table saw, and slide it right into the Inventables, and tell the machine to go. And all those steps that I used to do are done by the machine. And I still have to understand that, because there's so many steps that I normally do, just doing like the Joe Bartys, where I go through, I get the lumber, I cut it to length, I take the dado head and cut the slot in the middle of it, and then I go over to the bandsaw and I cut the arc on it, and then I go over here to the edge sander and, sand the edges around, and then I go over to the router table and then round over the edges. All those things, I put the wood in there, it's going to cut them out, and this is a matter of me assembling and painting it. So I have to get used to that idea of not using these quite as much. So it'll be interesting. Oh, but the other thing I want to show you over here. Okay, so forgive me because the workshop is still quite a bit of a mess because we are still rebuilding it. So it's taking stuff out of cabinets and taking those cabinets apart and rebuilding and changing things. And these are like the cutting boards I was talking about. See, these are really good. We actually burned our logo and stuff in there. I just got to sand those, and those will be done and ready to be shipped out. But for example, this is right here is a work table that I built. Now with this work table, this is what I'm doing. Here we go. This is a work table that actually I have these pieces. I don't know why that one's not going in there. Okay, let's see. That might be the, okay, that's the old one. These are actually hold down clamps that I can use on my face frames. And this is actually a benchtop Craig jig pocket hole cutter. And that cuts the hole right into the piece of wood. So I grab a scrap piece of wood here to give you an example. It cuts the pocket hole right here for me, see, for putting together cabinets. And then I can always clamp up the pieces here and actually put it together on this. And this is a thing that I've always tried to do to maximize the amount of space. Taking this piece that would normally need to be just sitting on a workbench above, recessing it so it's flat, it becomes part of a work surface, and then putting down the hole clamps on there basically makes it so it's a whole working center. What I will probably do is I'll get some more of these blanks right here like this, and I'll actually put them over here on the extension table that I have over here, so that way when I do need to do face frames, I've got a bigger work surface here, and then I can pop the clamps on here. So everything that I've done in this workshop has been about maximizing the workflow and minimizing the footprint of everything that I have in here, so that way I still have space to build some of the things that I love. So like these things, again, it's multiple steps that I normally take when I make this. It's all cut out by hand. The CNC machine is going to be doing that cutting, so I might get jealous. I'm Mark Holmes, and if you've got some questions or that I can answer about doing home improvements or woodworking and things like that, ask me, and I may do a video just for you on it. And 2 more days, the Inventables will be here, so I've got to make sure I'm ready for it. I'll see you guys soon.